Hello guys, Might is back again with another Typescript video, and today we'll be dealing with a concept that we saw earlier in the course, which was the concept of arrays. And I told you we'd look at this concept in more detail in a later video, and that time is now. So in this video we'll learn how to deal with a group of the same data or similar data. So before we get started, if you haven't already subscribed, please click on the subscription button below and hit the bell so you get notified whenever I release a new video so we can learn together. And if you like the video, hit the like button. If you get confused, comment down below. And if you don't like the video, hit the dislike button. And it'll also be nice if you can tell me why. So let's get started. Let's go. Just gonna zoom this a bit. So we've already seen the syntax of how we declare our arrays, but for those who haven't and are just starting to join the course on this video, I'll just revisit how we declare an array in Typescript. So I will go const, and then let's just say we want a list of numbers. I'm just showing the syntax now. So the list of numbers, we use so we have that, and then we have our empty array. So this is the name of your array, and here we're telling Typescript that we need the array to have numbers. And I also showed you another way, which was this way, where we have used the keyword array and have number over there. So those two things are the same. Whichever one you like to use, you can use either. I like using this one, so I'm going to use that. So now the case for arrays is most of the time when we deal with data of the same type, and we are not really trying to differentiate the data in any way. So or the difference in the data would actually be the data itself. So we can use the data in whatever value of the value of the data in the array to distinguish it from everything else. Now, an example would be, let's say now we have numbers numbers. Let's just say 1 to 4, right? And then we would like to get even numbers from our list, right? So before we can answer that question, let's learn a few concepts about arrays. So arrays, you can access the values in your arrays using this syntax. So you have your name, the name of your variable, and then you have your square brackets, and between your square brackets is the position in the array that you want to evaluate. So if I have 1 over here, so I'll just try and log this to the screen so we can see what this thing is. Console.log. So I'll just log that. So we're trying to log the number at position 1. This is what this is saying. The number at position 1, in this case, a number in position 1 in this group here. So now let's compile quickly. I'm going to compile that, and then I'm going to run it, and then we get 2. And if we look at our array here, we can see 2 is at position 2 according to us. But the difference is the computer does not see this as position 2. Arrays are actually 0 indexed, so they start from 0. This would be position 0 and this would be position 1. So when we're looking at arrays, when we say position 1, it goes there. So if we wanted to get the number over here, we would do that. That would be position 1, which is at index 0. So I'm going to compile this again and then run it. So now we get 1. So this is how you would get the number at position 1. And if you want the number at position 2, you'd use index of 1 and if you wanted 4, you'd use index of 3. So, and another thing that we should also we should know about arrays is we have this property on the arrays. So I've said this before, that to access properties on your variables, you use the dot syntax. So it's the name of your variable, and then you have dot. So once you do that, you can actually see some suggestions on in VS Code that is showing us, oh, this is actually, because it knows that this is an array of numbers, an array in this case, because there's no distinction at this point. So the one that I want to show you, will look at the rest sometime later. So now the one that I want to show you is the length property on this. So if we log this, so we would expect that our array to have length what? I don't know what you expect, but looking here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means the length of our array should be what? 4. Now let's compile our code and see what the result is. So we get 4. Now some people tend to think, since the array is 0 index, when you're looking at values in your array, like you're trying to access the values in your array, because we go from 0 to 3, some people might think that the length should be 3, but the length is still 4. The length is not 3, the length is still 4. Now I think maybe we have some tools to answer our question. So let's say we only wanted to print out the even numbers in our array. So we've seen something in our previous video where we were using loops, while loop and the for loop. So we can actually use a for loop to access the numbers in our array. So before we can answer that question, now let's just say we want to print out all the numbers in your array one by one, right? So now let's write some code for that. So we would have our for loop for let I, so I is our index, and then we know that we want to start at some position in the array, and we know that array is start at position 0. So we'll make our I start at 0 there, and then we'll have our semicolon, and then we want to stop the array at some point. Now we want to stop the array if the array gets to what? I is less than the length of the array. So now we say if I is less than, so we have numbers, so we'll say numbers dot length. So once we get that, while this guy is less than so once I gets to 4, because we know that 4 would be out of this array, because this would be position 3. So in this case, this would be 4. So we'd say I less than 4 in this case. So close that, and then we want to increase we want to increase I with every iteration. So now let's just console.log. So we have numbers, so just console.log I. So now we have this over here. So it'll run the first time, say I is 0, and this should print out 1 the first time, and then it will come back as 1, and then it should print out 2, and then it will come back the third time, and it'll print out 3, so on and so forth. So now let's just compile this and run it. So now we get 1, 2, 3, 4, which is what we're trying to do. But now we're revisiting another concept that we've seen in the TypeScript Essential course. We've looked at if statements. Now I'm actually now going to introduce something that we haven't seen before, which is the mod function. So what the mod function is something like so it's a percentage sign. So what the mod function, which is the modulo operation, is an operation that helps us find the remainder after division of one number by another one. So if we say divide 2 by 2, the remainder there is 0. So we'd get the mod being 0. The mod is I'm going to comment this out for now, and then we'll just see what the mod is. So I'll just go console.log 1. So you'd go 1 mod 2, and then I'll just go 2 mod 2. Just gonna have that there, and then just for a quick one, I'll end here with 3. So 3, and let's just see what we get for that. So I'm gonna compile it quickly, run it, and then we get 101. This is because 1 divided by 2 has a remainder of 1, and 2 divided by 2 has a remainder of 0, and 3 divided by 2 has a remainder of 1. So now we know that numbers divisible by 2 should give us a remainder of 0. So we will use this to answer our question of printing out only numbers that are divisible by 2. So we've seen if statements before. So if we say if our number in our array, if the number in our array mod 2 is equals to 0, then we print it out. So this is what we want, because we're saying, so to make this much better for us, because we're using this variable I, I'm just gonna have a number here. I'm just gonna call this num for number, and then I'm going to assign it to this guy, and then I'm just going to replace that value there. So every time it runs, this will have a new value. So I'm going to say num, and then we want to print out that number. So we only want to print out numbers that are divisible by 2, which are even numbers. So I'm going to compile it and run it again. So we have 2 and 4. So we've only printed 2 and 4, because it's going to come here and say start with 1. Is 1 divisible by 2? And then this is going to say no, and then we won't run it. So to show that this is actually what's happening, let's say 1, and then, sorry, I'm just going to go there, go 1, then I want to is even, and then I'll go else here, else num is odd. This is what we're going to do. And then I'm going to compile and run it again. So we say 1 is odd, 2 is even, 3 is odd, 4 is even, so on and so forth. So now we've seen how to access numbers in our arrays. We've seen how to use the modular function. I hope that was simple enough for you guys to understand. And in the next video, we will be looking at how to add things into an array and removing things out of an array. So let's learn.